When your thoughts become architects of reality, every obstacle bows before your conviction. Mindset is far more than a catchphrase. It is the invisible scaffolding built from your beliefs, attitudes, and inner narratives that silently shapes every choice you make. It is the lens through which you interpret setbacks, seize opportunities, and measure your own worth. In Jungian terms, your mindset is a living field of psychic energy, a composite of your conscious intentions intertwined with the archetypal patterns lodged in your unconscious. Carl Jung taught that each of us projects parts of our inner world outward, what he called projection. When your mindset is narrow or fearful, you unconsciously cast that limit onto reality, seeing obstacles instead of openings. Conversely, when you consciously integrate shadow elements, those disowned fears, doubts, and unwanted traits, you reclaim their energy and expand your inner horizon. What was once a hidden moat of self-sabotage becomes a reservoir of resilience. Imagine your mind as a theater stage. Your conscious thoughts are the actors, but the true power lies in the unseen backstage machinery, the archetypes, impulses, and conditioned responses that dictate which scripts you perform. By shining light on these behind-the-curtain forces through self-reflection and shadow work, you reprogram the stage directions. Your mindset shifts from rote reaction to inspired authorship. This reframing transforms mindset from a static attitude into an active, evolving energy signature. It becomes the quiet force that catalyzes bold action, much like the collective unconscious Jung described, which connects each individual psyche to a greater reservoir of human potential. When you align your conscious goals with the deeper currents of your psyche, your mindset ceases to be a barrier. It becomes the bridge to innovative thinking, courageous risk-taking, and sustained success. So understand, mindset is not fixed. It is a dynamic interplay of conscious choice and archetypal influence. To command success, you must learn to navigate this terrain, recognizing when old beliefs hold you back, confronting them without judgment, and weaving new empowering narratives that resonate with both your rational mind and your deeper self. In doing so, you prepare the ground for each of the 9 clues that follow. Proofs that your mindset is no longer a passive passenger but the driver of your destiny. Carl Jung illuminated that beneath our conscious narratives lies a vast self-regulating system of archetypes and shadow elements that shape every thought and action. He described the persona as the social mask we wear, constructed from cultural expectations and early conditioning, while the shadow harbors the disowned impulses we deny. When left unseen, these unconscious patterns sabotage our intentions, projecting their content onto the world as imagined obstacles or hidden threats. By turning awareness inward, exploring dream symbols and emotional flashpoints, you illuminate these backstage forces. Shadow integration then becomes the crucible for mental freedom. What once lurked as self-doubt or unacknowledged desire is consciously reclaimed, supplying your mindset with authentic power. Archetypal activation follows when you align with universal psychological patterns, whether the creator's vision, the warrior's resolve, or the sage's clarity, imbuing your thoughts with their dynamic energy. In this framework, mindset mastery is not mere positive thinking. It is the deliberate orchestration of conscious intent with the collective currents of the unconscious. Through projection reversal, you cease casting inner limits onto reality. Through archetypal embodiment, you channel deep propulsive forces. The result is a mindset that commands success by harmonizing rational strategy with the soul's timeless wisdom. Now that we've reframed mindset as a dynamic fusion of conscious intent and archetypal energy, it's time to recognize how that power manifests in action. These 9 clues aren't abstract virtues. They are real, observable shifts in thought and behavior that signal your mindset has moved from passive hope to active command. Watch for the ways you turn setbacks into springboards, sculpt your inner narrative, and harness emotion as fuel. Each clue lights a facet of your mental architecture, guiding you from intention to unstoppable impact. Clue 1. You rewrite failure as launchpad, not landmine. In your psyche, failure is never a dead end. It's gravity that pulls you toward higher ground. While most recoil at the sting of a misstep, clutching wounds of shame or frustration, you have trained yourself to treat setbacks as the raw material of progress. This shift hinges on a simple yet profound reframe. Rather than seeing failure as evidence that you're unworthy, you interpret it as an essential experiment in your ongoing mastery. At the heart of this transformation lies Jung's insight that what you resist persists. When you avoid or denounce failure, you strengthen its unconscious grip, allowing self-doubt to fester beneath the surface. By contrast, you lean into the discomfort, naming the exact elements that went awry, the assumptions you overlooked, the resources you misallocated, the beliefs that blinded you. In doing so, you pull failure into the light of consciousness, dissolving its power to destabilize. Thomas Edison's workshop provides the perfect illustration. He did not view each filament that flickered and died as a defeat. He saw it as data. He cataloged the outcomes, refined his approach, and returned to the bench, each failure teaching him precisely what conditions would ignite a sustained glow. Edison's iterative method wasn't blind persistence, but disciplined learning, a cycle of hypothesis, experiment, observation, and adjustment. You employ the same methodology in your pursuits. When a project falters, a conversation derails, or an investment dips, you don't spiral into recrimination. Instead, you conduct a personal after-action review. You interrogate your expectations, map out the variables you controlled versus those you didn't, and extract 3 clear lessons to apply next time. This ritual transforms emotional turmoil into structured insight and reorients your nervous system to associate mistakes not with failure loops, but with growth loops. Over time, these growth loops rewire your neural pathways. Your brain no longer spikes cortisol at the prospect of failure. It anticipates curiosity and learning. Each challenge becomes a portal inviting you to refine your vision and fortify your resilience. Others may see only missteps. You see stepping stones. This is the first clue that your mindset commands success. You have dissolved the landmines of fear and replaced them with launchpads of possibility. Failure no longer dictates your trajectory. Your disciplined response to it does. Clue 2. You sculpt your narrative rather than inhabit someone else's script. Most individuals live their lives reciting lines written by external forces, societal expectations, familial pressures, or culture's unspoken edicts. They act out roles preordained by status, background, or popular belief, often unaware of the subconscious playwrights shaping their every move. But you have reclaimed the pen. You recognize that your life story is not a fixed script handed down, but a living manuscript you continually revise and refine. At the psychological core of this shift lies Jung's notion of the persona versus the self. The persona is that constructed mask you wear to navigate social conventions. It carries the risk of overshadowing your authentic voice, causing you to recite cliches and echoes rather than original thought. In contrast, the self represents your integrated wholeness, where conscious choice and unconscious potential converge. By bringing awareness to the persona's patterns, where they come from, and why you adopted them, you dissolve their unconscious hold, making space for a narrative authored by your deepest values and aspirations. Consider Henry Ford's moment of narrative reclamation when he broke away from the entrenched carriage industry. He refused to accept the conventional wisdom that roads would never accommodate motor vehicles. Rather than perform the expected role of a carriage builder, he envisioned a future where moving assembly lines and affordable cars would redefine mobility. Ford didn't simply fit into someone else's economic storyline. He rewrote it, turning skepticism into a catalyst for innovation. You do the same in your everyday life. When you hear the familiar refrain, "You should follow that stable career path," or "success looks like this particular template," you pause. You ask, whose voice is this? Does it align with my emerging narrative? If it doesn't, you reframe or discard it, crafting a storyline that reflects your unique combination of talents, passions, and purpose. You develop the habit of questioning inherited assumptions, writing margin notes that challenge the default settings of your life. This process requires deliberate practices. You maintain a narrative journal where you map out pivotal chapters, moments when you stepped off the beaten path, when you felt the exhilaration of authorship over conformity. You use narrative reframing exercises, taking a challenging past event and rewriting its ending through the lens of growth and empowerment. Over time, these rewrites reprogram your internal scripts, so your default responses shift from "I can't" to "How can I?" and from "I must please" to "I choose authenticity." Neuropsychologically, this narrative sculpting strengthens your brain's default mode network, the internal storytelling system guiding it to preferentially construct empowering scenarios. Each day, your mind becomes more adept at generating self-directed scripts, leading to actions that align with your consciously chosen identity rather than unconscious conditioning. In social contexts, your self-authored narrative shines through. Colleagues and friends notice that you don't merely fit expectations, you define new ones. Your reputation evolves from compliant to creative leader. This magnetic presence draws collaborators who value innovation and authenticity, further reinforcing your psychologically self-written script. By continuously sculpting your narrative, you avoid the pitfall of living a half-lived life defined by others. You inhabit a story of your own making, one that carries the dynamic energy of your true self. This is the second clue that your mindset commands success. You no longer act out a borrowed script, but author every scene with deliberate intention and visionary purpose. Clue 3. You seek challenge zones where growth outpaces comfort. Comfort is a gilded cage for the psyche, welcoming in its familiarity but lethal to latent potential. While most shy away from discomfort, fearing exhaustion or failure, you gravitate toward environments that stretch your capabilities and expand your resilience. This isn't reckless thrill-seeking. It is a disciplined calibration of challenge to capacity designed to keep you growing rather than stagnating. At the heart of this dynamic lies the Yerkes-Dodson principle, reframed through a Jungian lens. Optimal performance occurs under moderate stress, not under the extremes of mind-numbing boredom or paralyzing anxiety. You have learned to identify this Goldilocks zone of tension, then deliberately immerse yourself in it, whether through ambitious creative projects, demanding leadership roles, or physical trials. Jung described the individuation journey as a path of dolor, a route that inevitably crosses thresholds of discomfort. You honor that truth by viewing uneasy experiences as invitations from your unconscious to ascend. When Hans Selye first articulated stress as the spice of life, he noted that organisms adapt and strengthen under repeated manageable pressure. You echo this insight daily by seeking new learning edges rather than retreating to the safe but sterile shore of routine. Consider the metaphor of steel tempered in fire. Andrew Carnegie once toured a steelworks furnace, witnessing metal heated to brilliance and quenched in fluid, transforming raw ore into a blade that held its edge. By exposing yourself to challenge public speaking, complex negotiations, or creative improvisation, you similarly temper your mind. The anxiety you feel before stepping into uncharted territory isn't a signal to stop, but a beacon marking the boundary of your previous limits. Practically, you design growth sprints, time-bound, high-intensity pursuits that push you beyond comfort. Perhaps it's a 7-day writing marathon, a leadership workshop that forces you into unfamiliar scenarios, or a physical challenge like a multi-day trek. Before each sprint, you set clear objectives and supportive frameworks, mentors, peer accountability groups, recovery rituals to ensure tension remains productive rather than destructive. By cycling through challenge and recovery, you create a rhythm that educates both nervous system and psyche. Your mind learns to anticipate and adapt to rising stress, progressively raising your threshold for complexity and uncertainty. Meanwhile, your inner narrative shifts from avoid what hurts to seek what transforms. This pivot rewires neural pathways to associate discomfort not with threat but with growth. In social and professional spheres, your willingness to step up when others step back sets you apart. Colleagues notice your calm under pressure, your eagerness to tackle difficult problems, and your ability to emerge stronger after trials. This reputation becomes a magnet for opportunities that require resilience and innovation, further reinforcing your strategy of growth through challenge. This is the third clue that your mindset commands success. You don't merely endure discomfort. You organize your life around it, ensuring that growth continuously outpaces comfort. In turning adversity into a structured catalyst, you transform your zones of unease into launchpads for ever-expanding mastery. Clue 4. You turn inner dialogue into strategic counsel, not harsh critic. The most powerful conversations you have happen within, but their tone determines whether you soar or stall. While many minds echo with relentless criticism, cataloging flaws, predicting failure, or replaying past mistakes, you have recast that inner voice into a wise advisor. Your self-talk no longer undermines. It guides coaches and elevates your performance. Jung recognized the psyche as a dialogue between conscious ego and unconscious depths. When that dialogue sours, when ego and shadow engage in blame or shame, it fractures your mental coherence. You intervene by illuminating the shadow's fears and reframing them as legitimate signals rather than condemnations. This reframing creates a constructive feedback loop. Awareness leads to inquiry, inquiry to insight, insight to strategic adjustment. Consider Walt Disney confronting creative block and financial peril. Instead of succumbing to panic, he spun his inner monologue into a series of probing questions. What story is the world craving? How can I make magic accessible, turning anxiety into innovation? His disciplined self-talk propelled him from bankruptcy to the creation of an entertainment empire. You replicate this method daily. When a doubt surfaces, I'm not prepared enough. I'll never measure up. You pause and translate it into a question. What specifically am I missing? How can I acquire that skill? What small step can I take now? Each question shifts your mindset from paralyzing self-judgment to actionable problem-solving. Neuroscientifically, you're rewiring the brain's default mode network. Each time you replace a cynical critique with a constructive prompt, you strengthen neural pathways associated with growth and weaken those tied to anxiety. Over weeks and months, this practice transforms your habitual inner narrative so that positive self-coaching becomes your mind's reflex. In practice, you maintain a strategic counsel journal, jotting down recurring negative thoughts and crafting their constructive counterparts. You might write, I can't handle this pressure. What resources can I leverage right now? I always fail at this. What lesson did I learn last time that I can apply today? You review these reframings each morning, setting the tone for a day, guided by intentional self-dialogue. In team settings, this inner mastery reflects outward. Your composed tone during meetings, your calm questioning in moments of tension, and your confident articulation of next steps all spring from the same disciplined mindset you cultivate internally. Colleagues sense that you're guided by clarity, not by stress-driven impulses, inspiring trust and collaboration. This is the fourth clue that your mindset commands success. You have converted your most intimate voice from a source of doubt into a tool of strategic insight, allowing every thought to serve your highest goals rather than sabotage them. Clue 5. You convert resistance into signposts for breakthrough. Every barrier, every bout of inertia, every moment when you feel stuck carries an embedded message, not a verdict of defeat, but a pointer toward your next evolution. While most bristle at resistance, perceiving it as the world's refusal to cooperate, you sense it as the landscape's contours guiding your journey. This disciplined stance transforms obstacles into signposts, each one illuminating where adaptation or innovation is required. Psychologically, this approach draws on Jung's idea of the compensation principle, where the unconscious compensates for conscious attitudes by presenting contradictory experiences. Resistance arises when unconscious material, unexamined fears, unmet needs, limiting beliefs bumps against your conscious agenda. Rather than pushing harder against the block, you interrogate its presence. What am I overlooking? Which assumption needs revision? Where is my energy leaking? Consider the example of Thomas Edison wrestling with the phonograph's early technical glitches. He could have chalked them up to flawed invention. Instead, each hiccup directed his attention to motor calibration, material conductivity, or acoustic resonance. Edison's lab wasn't a random workshop, it was a diagnostic field where resistance was the raw data for innovation. You adopt a similar mindset. When you sense friction, whether in a stalled project, a tense conversation, or a creative rut, you don't override it. You pause and map its edges. What shaped this friction? Are my goals aligned with my current resources? Does this tension signal a needed shift in approach? By treating resistance as feedback rather than hindrance, you collect critical intelligence about both external dynamics and internal readiness. In practice, you develop resistance logs, concise entries capturing the nature of each obstacle, your emotional response, and your analytical insights. Over time, patterns emerge. Perhaps collaboration falters when goals aren't co-created, or productivity dips when your environment lacks stimulation. These patterns become signposts, guiding targeted interventions, inviting you to redesign processes, renegotiate expectations, or refresh your mental frameworks. This disciplined engagement with resistance rewires your neural networks toward problem-seeking rather than problem-avoiding. Each encounter becomes an experiment, hypothesis, identify resistance test, apply, reframe strategy, outcome, observe change, adjust, iterate. Your brain begins to anticipate resistance as a standard data point in project planning, integrating it seamlessly into your decision-making flow. Furthermore, translating resistance into signposts fosters psychological agility. You learn to pivot gracefully, shifting from linear force, pushing through to strategic leverage, redirecting energy. This agility scales from micro decisions altering meeting formats when debate stalls to macro shifts, reimagining product offerings when market feedback resists current models. In leadership and teamwork, your knack for decoding resistance cultivates trust and innovation. Rather than blaming individuals or processes, you treat resistance as a shared challenge. You invite colleagues to co-analyze friction points, fostering a culture where setbacks spark collective intelligence instead of guilt or blame. The result is a resilient ecosystem where obstacles catalyze creativity. This is the fifth clue that your mindset commands success. You don't view resistance as a stop sign, but as a navigation grid. Each struggle becomes a compass pointing toward richer strategies, deeper self-knowledge, and ultimately breakthrough. By converting friction into feedback, you harness the full power of adversity to propel your journey forward. Clue 6. You align thoughts with purpose before actions follow. Every act of creation begins in the mind, yet most people rush from idea to execution without pausing to synchronize their mental landscape with a deeper why. You, however, have forged a disciplined ritual before any action unfolds. Your thoughts are calibrated to the lodestar of purpose, ensuring that every step you take carries the weight of intentionality and meaning. Psychologically, this practice draws on Jung's concept of the self, the integrated center of the psyche that orders both conscious aims and unconscious drives. When your thoughts leap ahead without anchoring in the self, they scatter like sparks in the wind, dissipating energy and attention. By contrast, when you consciously bridge intention with inner purpose, illuminating each goal with the flame of your core values, you create a coherent directive that the psyche can rally behind. Imagine Abraham Lincoln drafting the Gettysburg Address. His brevity was no accident. Each carefully chosen word reflected a profound alignment between national healing and the individual sacrifice of those who fell. Lincoln did not simply string sentences together. He molded his every thought to serve the transcendent purpose of unity and freedom. The result was a speech that resonated through history not because of oratory flair alone, but because it emerged from an unshakable core of purpose. You apply this alignment daily. Before launching a project, you practice a purpose priming exercise. You close your eyes, Visualize the broader impact you intend, whether it's inspiring a team, solving a customer's pain, or advancing collective well-being, and you let that vision infuse your strategic planning. Only then do you draft your roadmap, knowing that each objective is limbed with meaning. This approach rewires your executive function, the brain's planning and prioritization network, by linking motivation centers driven by purpose with action, centers driven by tasks. Neuroscience shows that when goals are value-laden, the brain releases dopamine more readily, strengthening commitment and resilience. In practical terms, you feel less friction when obstacles arise because the purpose-driven mindset sustains you through challenge. You also maintain a purpose ledger, a distilled statement of your current mission reviewed at the start of every week. This ledger isn't a vague platitude. It's a concrete articulation of how your work connects to something larger, a social cause, an artistic vision, a legacy of innovation. By revisiting it regularly, you prevent drift and ensure that tactical choices remain in harmony with strategic purpose. In teams, your purposeful alignment accelerates collective momentum. Colleagues sense your clarity and are more willing to commit because they can see how their contributions feed into a meaningful outcome. This shared focus reduces miscommunication, enhances ownership, and fuels a culture of intentional collaboration rather than reactive firefighting. Moreover, by anchoring thoughts and purpose before action, you avoid the trap of busy work. When distractions beckon urgent but unimportant emails, reactive meetings tempting side quests, you measure them against your purpose ledger. If they don't advance your mission, you let them pass, preserving your energy for tasks that matter. This disciplined synergy between thought and purpose is the sixth clue that your mindset commands success. You don't simply do, you do with significance. Every plan, every decision, every movement becomes an echo of your deepest convictions, ensuring that your journey is not just busy, but profoundly impactful. Clue 7. You inhabit ambiguity with curiosity, not fear. In a world desperate for certainty, you've come to see ambiguity as fertile ground rather than a void to fear. Most minds recoil at uncertainty, craving clear rules and predictable outcomes. You, however, recognize that the edges of your comfort zone where data is scarce and paths uncharted are precisely where innovation and profound insight emerge. This capacity stems from Jung's insight into the psyche's need for both structure and openness. He spoke of the tension between opposites, conscious and unconscious, known and unknown, as the creative spark of individuation. When you tolerate uncertainty without defaulting to anxiety, you allow that spark to ignite. You hold the questions alive, resisting the urge to prematurely impose familiar but limiting answers. Consider Walt Disney's journey into theme parks. The idea of building Disneyland in the swamplands of Anaheim flew in the face of conventional wisdom. Investors saw risk. Disney saw potential. He didn't wait for perfect blueprints or market assurances. Instead, he sketched possibilities, tested ride prototypes, and iterated on feedback. His curiosity about what if propelled him through murky territory, transforming a once hostile environment into the world's first immersive entertainment kingdom. You use similar strategies when faced with ambiguity. Instead of demanding certainty, you map the unknown with questions. What patterns might emerge here? Which assumptions could be misleading? How can I experiment without overextending resources? By turning each question into a hypothesis rather than a crisis, you transform anxiety into exploration. Practically, you maintain an ambiguity journal capturing moments of uncertainty and your constructive responses. You note hypotheses, experimental steps, and outcomes, treating each ambiguous scenario as a micro-laboratory. This practice trains your neural circuits to associate uncertainty with curiosity and discovery, diminishing the cortisol spike that usually accompanies doubt. In teams, your comfort with ambiguity anchors collective innovation. When others panic at shifting priorities or incomplete data, you model calm inquiry. You facilitate brainstorming that welcomes bad ideas, knowing that even offbeat notions can lead to breakthrough solutions. This mindset fosters psychological safety and a culture where people feel empowered to voice unpolished thoughts without fear of judgment. By inhabiting ambiguity with curiosity, you unlock smarter decisions. You gather partial data, test small experiments, and pivot fluidly, leveraging incomplete information rather than stalling for perfection. This dynamic agility sets you apart in environments where speed and adaptability outweigh rigid planning. This is the seventh clue that your mindset commands success. You thrive in the unknown, treating ambiguity not as a threat to control, but as an invitation to explore. In doing so, you harness the creative tension of uncertainty, forging insights and opportunities that those anchored to certainty will never see. Clue 8. You cultivate a relentless yes and schult attitude toward opportunity. While many hesitate at the threshold of possibility, worrying that a new venture might stretch them too thin or that uncharted paths might lead to dead ends, you have adopted the improvisational ethos of yes and as the engine of growth. This mindset, borrowed from theater ad-libs, translates into a powerful principle. You affirm each emerging opportunity and then build upon it creatively rather than rejecting it out of fear or clinging only to familiar routes. Psychologically, this approach counters the rigid framing of fixed mindset thinking, which sets boundaries around what's safe or possible. Jung's work on archetypes reveals that the hero, the explorer, and the creator all thrive in openness. They answer the call of adventure by saying yes to the unknown and then forging new narratives. By embracing yes and, you rewire your anticipatory mechanisms. Instead of scanning for threats, you scan for potential synergies and growth edges. Imagine Walt Disney encountering skepticism about animated feature films. Rather than retreating, he said yes to the technology and then layered in new artistic techniques. Multiplane cameras, synchronized sound, vibrant color palettes, turning each innovation into a springboard for the next. His relentless yes and attitude propelled once cynical investors to back his vision, culminating in groundbreaking classics that reshaped an entire industry. You mirror this strategy daily. When a fresh idea arises, whether a prospective collaboration, a novel product feature, or an unexpected piece of feedback, you don't dismiss it because it feels outside your comfort zone. You acknowledge its core strength, yes, and then ask, and how might we amplify its impact? This additive process spawns combinations that outpace linear planning, generating exponential value from the interplay of diverse insights. In practice, you maintain an opportunity map, a living diagram where each new prospect is positioned as a node with connecting arcs representing possible extensions and integrations. For instance, a client request to streamline a workflow becomes the yes and the and, unfolds as you explore automation, cross-functional team coaching, and iterative feedback loops to refine the solution. By visually mapping these yes and vectors, you avoid dismissing nascent ideas and instead cultivate a culture of creative abundance. Neuroscientifically, this positive additive framing engages the brain's reward circuitry more robustly than a mere yes-no binary. Each and triggers dopamine surges linked to novelty and pattern recognition, reinforcing the neural pathways that favor exploration over caution. Over time, your mind becomes habituated to collaboration between conscious creativity and unconscious insight, generating innovative combinations almost reflexively. Within teams, your yes and stance transforms group dynamics. Rather than shutting down colleagues' proposals, you seed them with complementary suggestions, fostering a generative feedback loop. This co-creative environment not only accelerates ideation, but also builds psychological safety as people learn that their contributions will be received and elevated rather than dismissed. This is the eighth clue that your mindset commands success. You treat every opportunity as a starting point for further creation. By affirming potential and then layering on imaginative development, you transcend binary thinking and unlock a landscape of exponential possibility where each yes and compounds into breakthroughs that redefine what's achievable. Clue 9. You radiate belief so strong it shifts the collective unconscious around you. True mastery of mindset transcends individual success. It resonates outward, subtly reshaping the shared psychological field in which we all operate. When your belief in possibility becomes so unwavering, so vivid, that it touches others at an unconscious level, you become a living conduit for collective ambition. This isn't mere charisma or motivational speech. It is the activation of an archetypal force that Jung described as the very engine of cultural transformation. At the heart of this phenomenon lies the concept of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of ancestral patterns, symbols, and shared human experiences that undergird our individual psyches. Jung observed that certain individuals, through their clarity of vision and depth of conviction, tap into these archetypal currents and give them form in the world. Their belief acts like a tuning fork, setting the vibration of the broader field and inviting others to resonate at that higher frequency. Consider Abraham Lincoln's unwavering faith in the Union during the Civil War. Despite widespread despair, he held firm to a vision of a nation united and free. That conviction, expressed in speeches like the Gettysburg Address, did more than inspire a few hundred listeners. It reverberated through the American consciousness, renewing collective resolve and altering the course of history. His mindset didn't just command his own actions, it realigned the moral compass of an entire people. You wield this catalytic power in your own sphere. When you embody your values so thoroughly, when every gesture, tone, and decision aligns with your conviction, others pick up on that coherence, often without realizing why. You exude a field of possibility that permeates boardrooms, social gatherings, or creative studios, prompting those around you to question their own self-limiting beliefs. A hesitant collaborator suddenly volunteers a bold idea. A discouraged team member rediscovers their motivation. A skeptical observer catches a glimpse of a new horizon. This capability arises from disciplined practices that synchronize personal belief with collective archetypes. Visionary embodiment. You don't merely espouse a goal, you live it. Each morning you perform a ritual of embodiment, visualizing your desired outcome with sensory detail, then carrying that imagery into your daily interactions. This sustained mental rehearsal imprints the collective field with your conviction. Symbolic communication. You harness metaphors, stories, and archetypal imagery, whether referencing Edison's iterative spark, Disney's imaginative worlds, or Carnegie's steel empire, to connect personal goals to universal human narratives. This symbolic bridge invites others to see themselves as part of something greater. Consistent alignment. You ensure your actions are congruent with your stated beliefs. When your words, plans, and behaviors align seamlessly, you eliminate dissonance that could weaken your influence. Consistency amplifies credibility, reinforcing the archetypal resonance. Neuroscientifically, this practice engages mirror neuron networks and emotional contagion pathways in observers' brains. When people see your unwavering belief expressed through confident posture, steady tone, and purposeful action, they unconsciously mirror that state, heightening their own openness to possibility. In team and community contexts, your radiated belief becomes the substrate for collective momentum. You may notice heightened morale, greater collaboration, and an increase in creative risk-taking as a direct response to your energetic field. Rather than dictating outcomes, you evoke them by shifting the shared psychological climate. This is the ninth and final clue that your mindset commands success. You have transcended the confines of individual attainment to become a catalyst within the collective unconscious. Your belief penetrates beyond conscious awareness, stirring dormant potentials and realigning group aspirations. When your inner conviction radiates outward with unshakable clarity, you do more than achieve goals, you transform the cultural currents that carry us all. Commanding success through mindset is not a self-indulgent luxury, but a profound responsibility to honor your own potential and to ignite the latent strengths in everyone you touch. Hold fast to the privilege of this power by continuing the inner work. Keep a shadow journal to explore what still hides beneath your surface. Perform regular belief audits to root out any narratives that no longer serve you. Rehearse your highest mindset in vivid mental simulations each morning and immerse yourself in communities that challenge and uplift your growth. Let every practice you adopt be a reaffirmation of your duty to live by example and to raise the collective bar of possibility. What belief will you choose to fortify next? Commanding success through mindset is not a self-indulgent luxury, but a profound responsibility to honor your own potential and to ignite the latent strengths in everyone you touch. Continue your inner work by keeping a shadow journal to explore what still hides beneath your surface. Running regular belief audits to root out narratives that no longer serve you. Rehearsing your highest mindset in vivid mental simulations each morning and immersing yourself in growth-focused communities that challenge and uplift you. Let every practice reaffirm your duty to live by example and elevate the collective field of possibility. If this journey resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss any future insights. Your growth fuels this community. Let's rise together. What belief will you choose to fortify next?